Adagio and Fugue was written in the time when he was writing his 3 great last symphonies. The E-flat major, the world-famous G minor, and the world-famous Jupiter. It is very interesting to see that there is no outside reason, no commission, why he should have written that. At the same moment, it's one of the most powerful and incredibly different works. To talk first about the Fugue was not new. He wrote this in 1788, but the Fugue was written in 1783, when he was writing his Linz Symphony on the way back from Salzburg to Vienna. Why did he write such a fugue? It has a theme. It's you go from fifth and to wider, and then there's a theme by Bach which is called the Art of Fugue. But there's the big Thema Regium, the king's theme for the musical offering, which is almost parallel to what Mozart chose. Mozart knew what he was doing. He was aware that he was stepping, not in competition, but in a lineage coming from Bach, whom he had discovered, and trying to do his contribution. For him, it was a compositorial exercise, wonderfully accomplished. And the Adagio is written in a style which hints at Baroque style. He rarely has written something more profound, courageous, almost risky in harmonies, and deep in emotion. So this is one of Mozart's most impressive works. The other Mozart piece was written 2 years before the piano version, in 1781, when he still was in Salzburg. But he was in Vienna once in a while, and he wanted to write something to please the emperor, or at least the people who were close to the emperor, to be promoted. This serenade is written only for wind instruments. And there was a great tradition in the German-speaking world among houses of princes, counts, noblemen, who didn't want to afford a big string orchestra with a couple of winds. They just hired a wind band. So the serenade was written for 6 musicians, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, and 2 horns. And he wrote to his father, I want to please His Majesty, or at least the people who are close to him, so I've written it a little bit reasonably. He says, I didn't only make fun, I've written it reasonably. And it's a full-fledged serenade for wind orchestra, not what he did for strings, sometimes 6, 7, 8, it's 5 movements. I'm happy to sit down with our musicians, winds, and work on such a piece, which is not the daily repertoire of a symphony orchestra. The Octet for winds is written in 1922 and is commonly seen as a turn in the road of Stravinsky to a new style, to the so-called Neo-Classical style or Neo-Baroque style. Stravinsky has had his absolutely breathtaking world success with Diaghilev in Paris, when he wrote for the Ballet Russe, for the Russian ballet, his triad of Firebird, Petrushka, and Rite of Spring. If you see now the instrumentation of especially Firebird and Rite of Spring, it's just an ocean of musicians. These are the scores where you see 100 players on stage. Then came, now we have Corona. Then it was World War #1. And the money for music was kind of not so much available. So he adjusted and he wrote something which was transportable. 7 musicians, 2 dancers, and a narrator, dancers, actors, and it's called The Soldier's Tale, l'histoire du soldat. And you find music there, the same thinking musically of creating music like in the Octet. The Octet is full of wit, very funny, tongue-in-cheek, and all of a sudden you see that he's not only joking, he's deeply serious with expressive music, and it's a short piece of 15 minutes about. It's extremely virtuosic for the players, and it's of course a joy for strong musicians to measure their skills on this piece. The other Stravinsky is Apollon musagète, and it was written for a great American musical mecene and sponsor, Elizabeth Sprague Coolidge, who lives in Washington in a nice palais, and she had inspired many, I think a good dozen of great composers to write music for a chamber music society, and it was deemed to be played in America. It was played in America in the next year. Stravinsky was not very interested to see the American premiere, but he returned the score to Paris and gave it to Diaghilev and had it performed by the Ballet Russe, which was of course brilliant. And it's important to notice that the choreography was done by the, I think, 21-year-old young boy who was not famous then, Georges Balanchine. The music is, compared to the Octet, sweet. He just masked himself in the beautiful French tradition, nice, unoffensive ballet music traditions. He grew up, Stravinsky, since his Paris times in 1910, with great respect and love for these people, and always was ready to deliver music for them. So I'm happy to present these 2 works of Stravinsky, which are not everyday repertoire in an orchestra like Singapore Symphony and other symphony orchestras, but which are a very beautiful, enriching color and touch to every symphony orchestra's repertoire.